Going live now.
We're live.
Namaskar, bhaiyo behno. Good evening. Today with me is Advaita back on my show. You will remember her last show, which was from capital Kannur, where I had discussed with her the reason that made her leave her comfortable life and a very typical urban life and go all the way to Kannur. And there are some very sensitive things that she talked about because she had seen things firsthand. Now, unfortunately, we have seen another brutal murder before that. In fact, not even murder, it's a brutal lynching. And before that, just 2 weeks back, such a murder also took place. And this has, while the violence, cycle of violence had reduced a bit, but suddenly find is flaring up. And this time it is flaring up with a very strange combination of the extreme Islamist organizations along with the Marxist lobby, the leftist lobby. And we have been warning about this strange alliance a lot of times, but it's a thing that is a reality now. So this sad moment, I thought that I'll again have another round of talk with Advaita because she has that typical emotional connect with that land. And the land which is supposed to be God's own country is a killing field as far as RSS and BJP volunteers are concerned. So this brings me to this discussion today. It is going to be a short discussion, not very long. So that are first thoughts.
Oh, it's Ratan Shahdaji. First of all, I want to thank you for having this conversation. I think it's the least we can do is to keep talking about, these martyrs who are killed in this way, in the most brutal way that you can imagine. And at a time when Hindutva is, just see the hypocrisy. They're comparing Hindutva to ISIS. And few days later, so generating that propaganda and hate. And then a few days later, a young man, 27-year-old father of a 1-year-old with his wife is basically knocked down on the street and stabbed with a machete over 50 times. I don't know if you've seen the visuals of Sajid's murder, but there was a pool of water because and that was completely red with his blood, right? So this is the gruesome and the nature of this kind of crime. And yet not one of those people who till a few days ago were issuing statements, were on TV channels, or Rahul Gandhi who tweeted or said or commented, I don't know what he did. I don't follow him on Twitter anymore because I just found his New York Times cover image when people were dying in India very insensitive. So I don't, but it was reported in the media that he supported this Hindutva nonsense, redefining it this way. But my point is that not one of them, even on the basis of just humanity, and they claim to be human rights warriors, have issued a note of condemnation, of acknowledgement.
Tharoor has called Hindutva people as
hooliganism. And this murder has happened in Tharoor's state. Yeah. This murder has not happened anywhere else. So there is no luxury of distance. It's a gruesome murder that has happened in his state. And he goes ahead and calls, what was, I want to ask your viewers and anyone who's watching, what was the hooliganism behind a young man, a young father, riding a motorcycle with his wife and going about his daily life? What was so provocative about that? And these people have no shame. They can't talk about it. They cannot condemn it, even just purely on the basis of the brutality of the crime. Forget anything else. Should our streets be seeing this kind of violence and crime? Forget the ideology. Should we be seeing this? And this is happening in Dr. Tharoor's own state. And this is how tone deaf and insensitive politicians are.
See what happens, Beta, when you start normalizing violence of Boko Harams and ISIS and you ridicule the violence against RSS, when PFI takes out a procession beating a lookalike of an RSS Swayamsevak, then they take out a procession with lookalike of Yogi Adityanath, and nobody objects. They just laugh it off. So this
Yes.
promotion of violence against people who have nothing to do with the kind of violence, and people laughing at it, and people not giving a thought about it, government not taking any action, these kind of hate, presentation of such hate,
Hmm.
naturally then life of a Swayamsevak or a Hindu becomes very cheap. It is not just question of RSS worker in Kerala. Anywhere in India, when a Hindu is killed or lynched, there is no news at all. A girl who had acid thrown on her because her suitor
Hmm.
wanted to somehow get her
Hmm.
never became a news. You marry somebody by cheating, and then when you brutalize the woman, there is no news. So this strange way of talking, normalizing a Boko Haram, which kills women because they want to get educated, or sell them on the streets like in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and nothing moves. And then they tell us that Hindutva is violent, hooligan, and whatnot. And
Hmm.
I am not even saying, you go by what RSS says or Hindu, nothing. But as a human being in a democratic society where you take oath on democracy, you take oath on constitution, you take oath on secularism and equality of all, and keep shouting about human rights and human life, why a life is lesser life than any other life? That is a question.
No, and I
This,
think, and this distinction that is being made, that Hindutva is something else, Hindu is something else, etc., etc. I mean, the public is not foolish. We saw that dismantling Hindutva conference, so-called academic conference. The videos of that were leaked, and in those videos, they went ahead and admitted that the problem is
yes,
Hinduism. They
yes,
were not making any distinction. The
yes.
distinction was only there for the projection and the poster. But
This
in
is to
reality,
confuse.
in
Yeah,
their own words, they
yes,
made a distinction. They didn't make a distinction, I'm sorry,
yeah.
between Hinduism and Hindutva. They said Hinduism is the problem, full stop. And
They are
so I
clear.
find this
Yeah,
actually, Ratan Shahdaji, this whole Hindutva versus Hindu debate is extremely spurious.
yeah,
It is just a fig leaf. The
yeah,
main attack is really on Hindus. And I think that
yeah.
became very clear with this dismantling Hindutva conference. That was not their aim, but what it ended up doing was exposing their real agenda. So now anyone who comes up with this spurious debate of Hindutva versus Hindu, no one's buying it. At least nobody with any common sense is buying it.
See the kind of support that PFI gets from this communist lobby and leftist lobby is astounding, because they take action. The leftist lobby has also killed Indian Muslim League youth. They have killed communist youth, as you know
Hmm.
when you went there. But this PFI, they don't lift a finger. And what is the history of PFI? 100 crores transferred during the last various kind of agitations. ED has records of that, what is called Hawala, etc. February 2021, STF arrested two recruiters of PFI in UP. So
Hmm.
they are working in different states also. October 2020, PFN man in front of journalist in Hathras was found to be promoting violence when the Hathras incident happened. In February 2021, STF, the same state terrorist squad raided their office and found many disincriminating documents. And Pinari was sitting with Madani, who
Hmm.
was responsible for 55 killings in serial blast in Coimbatore, and he was sitting with them in the public meeting. But
Hmm.
CPM blames Jamaat-e-Islami. They have recently, in a document, criticized Jamaat-e-Islami for increasing radicalization. While the fact if PFI has radicalized youth, the police and everybody talks about it, they have taken youth to ISIS, they have taken women to ISIS to work as comfort women, etc. And but the Communist Party talks about Jamaat-e-Islami. So the real culprits will never be discussed. They will never be brought to book. It's very clear. If you look at the conviction rate of these people when they have committed murder against RSS Swayamsevaks, and number today is around 260, if I'm not wrong, since this violent spree started. And Syro Malabar Church has talked about narcotic jihad through the same Islamist lobby. It has
Hmm.
talked about love jihad from the same lobby, but they are laughed off. They are
Hmm.
criticized because they have opened their mouth. So when this is the scenario, how do you think that you will have safety in that state, that people can live safely. A woman was attacked, if you remember, who opened a restaurant, non-halal restaurant. You have a choice of food. You say, my food, my choice. I will cut the calf on the road. The Congress people cut the calf on the road and distribute like it is some kind of prasad and had a party on that. But that woman who opened a restaurant has been attacked violently. Then there are stories around, she was doing this and that. Whatever she was doing, in what way hacking of a woman was justified? So how long did this particular lobby close their eyes?
No, close their eyes. And back in 2010, T.J. Joseph, the professor, his hand was hacked off because he had allegedly introduced some blasphemous question in the question paper or something like that. So they are a very violent organization which has had a history of violence. In fact, there are office bearers of the band outfit Simi who are also in PFI. So that it's very likely, and the NIA has investigated this very closely, that they are just another version of Simi. Simi was shut down, it was banned, and subsequently the PFI came up. Now they claim to be looking after persecuted Muslims and fighting for justice, etc., etc. But look at the facts. The NIA has investigated them thoroughly. Like you said, there have been raids on their office premises by the ED because of the international funding that they're receiving. Why are they receiving the international funding? Let's be very clear. There are people who are going to ISIS who have links to PFI. Okay, and left for Syria and ISIS territory and did all of that, who have clearly established links with PFI. That is why they are being investigated. And I don't think that we need to kind of, soft pedal around this. They are now present in 23 states. They have a history of violence. This most recent attack on Sajid has been linked to SDPI, which is the political arm of the PFI. Right? The PFI has taken out processions on the streets of Kerala with very violent imagery involving RSS Swayamsevaks in their uniforms, in the Ganavesh, and so there is no confusion about who they're discussing. Of course, there are PFI members who are dressed like that, but the bottom line is that could you do that with any other demographic? Could you carry out a street procession showing people tied up in handcuffs with a rope around their neck and someone raising a sword, a stick over their head, and carry out a procession like that in any street, in any civilized country?
And but nobody said anything. The government took no action. Not only they took out the procession, there is no action against them. And not only that, imagine the scene changes and there is an RSS procession or BJP procession in which somebody is shown as a typical Muslim with lungi and all that, and he's being beaten. Just imagine the outrage. Rightly so. But why such an outrage only when we talk about Hindus, but no outrage when Hindus are outraged like this, and no thought of how you are promoting hatred, how you are promoting violence in this? No imagination. When Rahul Gandhi talked about this violent Hindutva and Mokaram, etc., in Kerala, Swayamsevaks have been killed. 2 killings in 15 days. So this, and in 2008, what Kerala High Court judge said, manslaughter had become order of the day. That's his wording. Then he said, I'm ashamed on democratic institutions when police under political influence are shielding guilty and sending innocent people behind the bar. This is the scenario of Kerala till now. And then you find suddenly the Islamist organizations also coming in and tying up with these extreme leftist forces. So where is Kerala going? That is a question that we have to ask. And what is Congress doing? Rather than fighting those forces, it is creating a hullabaloo around RSS and BJP.
Oh, yes. I mean, the Congress has no intention of fighting those forces. So let's make that very clear. The Congress looks the other way, consistently looks the other way. And this is very much part of a strategy of strengthening their base in Kerala. We all know that the Congress's political fortunes in the rest of the country have really diminished. It's hardly present in any significantly large state, except for Punjab. We know what's happening in Punjab. There's a total fracture. Their tallest leader has left the party. Chhattisgarh, there is a lot of dissent between Baghel and Singh Deo. Rajasthan, there is a problem between Gehlot and Sachin Pilot. Jammu and Kashmir is the latest place where there are again issues. The only place that they seem to be quiet and getting on is in the Mahavikas Aghadi, because they are the junior most partner there and really have nothing in terms of leverage in that sense. So they're going along. But this is a party that is driven by internal divisions. In UP, as per all the pre-poll surveys, the Congress is coming in the fourth position with a dismal performance of seats. So that's also not rejuvenated. So Kerala is really the one state, although they've lost this last time, but Rahul Gandhi has been, of course, elected from Wayanad, and he has been elected with significant Muslim support from a parliamentary seat, which requires Muslim support for there to be a winning
But
candidate.
see, Rahul Gandhi got the sort of support of SDP, etc. And now Communist parties soft peddling the same SDP and PFI. So is there a competition between the extreme organization? So who will pay the price? By both the parties trying to compete for the same block of extreme votes rather than what they were earlier with different types. Your voice is lost. Your voice is lost.
Can you hear me now?
Now, yes. No.
Okay, so I'll get to the communists. I'm trying to explain why the Congress is silent here is because Rahul Gandhi is from the state, is the elected MP from the state of Kerala, and has been elected because of the Muslim vote in that particular parliamentary constituency. Hence, it serves his needs to look the other way when it comes to this radicalization. And that means, because by default, then it serves the Congress's needs to look away, never mind that this is terrible for the country, what is happening, this kind of radicalization. And this is, there was a time when if you spoke like this, people will say you're communal. No, I want to clarify that. Nobody is talking about Muslims. Everybody is talking about this particular strain that is loose here, which influences 21 young Muslims to leave their homes and go to a war-torn country, never to return, okay, devastating their families. We're talking about this. We're not talking about Muslims. So let me be clear on that. And there's no reason why we should not talk about it. In fact, if you notice now, Dr. Sharda, they've started even, the church has started speaking up on
Yes, that's what I said. Yes.
Very openly. In the past, once you interact, I've spent time with around this issue for some time now. The Malayalis, and very rightly so, are very proud of their syncretic culture. The fact that, all the three major faiths with about equal population get along, and, it reflects in their cinema, in their daily lives, in their practices, in their celebrations where they celebrate each other's festivals, and it's a literate state. It's a wonderful way of life, if that is all that is happening. But unfortunately, there is this element which is now getting nastier and nastier and more brutal. And the two dominant parties in Kerala, BJP is not even a factor. The two dominant parties, which is the CPM and the Congress, are for their own reasons pandering to this, because they're realizing that the Muslim vote is usually an en bloc vote. They will vote in bulk. So if you sway that vote, then you'll get lakhs of votes together. You're not fighting for one community, one certain number of votes from one district or anything like that. There is a tendency to vote en bloc. So now the CPM has started inducting these elements into their cadre to solidify power.
Yeah, I'm told that in fact the cadre that PFI have come from Marxist groups. And some PFI have crossed over to Marxist groups. That's also true. So there is interchange between, just like in Bengal, TMC got all the violent lumpen elements of Communist Marxist party or left party. Something similar is happening here in Kerala also.
No, but I feel that this is definitely a calibrated strategy. I don't think it's as sort of people looking for political opportunity and moving here and there, which we see sort of happening in the north of India all the time. People abandoning their ideology and moving for the bigger, better deal. No, I don't think it's that at all. It's definitely a part of a strategy. The communists have now introduced this chap called Haji, who was a mass murderer, as one of their icons, and their posters and things like that up of his,
The
wherein
Mopla leader, the
yeah,
Mopla leader,
correct. So they
Kunjaman.
are they are of course pandering. What is this? If you're celebrating a man who has killed Hindus,
They call them freedom fighters.
you're pandering.
And
So
they are called freedom fighters in their books. I mean, in the books of government of India, also these entries got somehow.
hmm,
And they have been decorated as freedom fighters. Now, I think that has been withdrawn. But
hmm,
327 of them, and
yeah.
some of them, including Haji Kunjaman.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the person, Haji.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I think it's very dangerous for national security, and that is my real concern. My real concern is not what they want to do with their politics, who they elect, how they elect that person, what the deal is. I don't care about that. It doesn't matter. But the bottom line is that you are compromising national security. There are sleeper cells active. There are connections that have been drawn to ISIS and other terrorist organizations. NIA is actively investigating them. This is my question to the government. Why is this organization not banned? What will it take to ban them? I mean, what do they have to do to be
But
banned?
see, to play the devil's advocate, Simi was banned. It came with a new form. I think more important is how strict you are with these people, whether they're named Simi, whether they're given the name of PFI, whether they're banned or not banned. If these people can go scot-free under the state governments, the central government has limited role to play in that. And this application has to go via the state governments. If the local state government finds PFI a very, very happy organization who can take out processions, violent processions, then the government has to override the local state government. So if we are able to contain these people in the state government tries to contain them. What happened in Bengal? Because state government is controlling it, we had huge problem. There was violence against Hindus there also. So this stage pandering, which has become violent now, and then to blame others for this particular situation is very sad. And this is happening in bordering states. They have gone ahead and created unrest in Punjab in the name of farmer agitation. Khalistani elements have entered. Communists are now enjoying the sunshine for some days there. You got Kerala, you got Bengal, you got Assam, where luckily for us, the chief minister is very strict. UP would have been in very bad shape if Yogi was not very strict about this law and order. So when Congress tries to play a dangerous game, it fails to remember that it is one of the oldest party in India. It ruled India for nearly 70 years. She or its ally partners, and today it behaves so irresponsibly and putting the nation to risk in the name of opposing Modi ji. I think this particular incident in Kerala actually signifies the totally cynical approach of the secularists, of the communists, and
Mhm.
all the opponents of BJP, RSS, that they will put even nation at stake, peace of societies at stake to somehow control the votes. And
Mhm.
my question to Muslims, which I just realized 3 4 days back, and though we talk about it, I talked on a Canadian YouTube channel, that
Mhm.
do they realize that Allah, when Muhammad talked about Islam, did he talk about different sects? Did he say that you kill each other? There is an issue of non-believers, you kill non-believers, blah, blah, and all that. But within Islam, the whole of Middle East is burning, whole Middle East is getting destroyed in the name of their own religion.
Mhm.
Shia, Sunni, and whatnot, whether it's Yemen, whether it's Syria or uh, Iraq or Iran. Do our Muslims in India look at the kind of life that so-called Islamic countries are leading today? And the kind of violence that those generations have faced, millions have been killed. And what is the end result, and why there is this battle? It is a battle between the different sections of the same community.
Mhm.
Quran has not sanctioned it. If they at all they are so devoted to Quran and Prophet, they never created those different sects. Allah didn't create the different sects. So be religious, be true to your religion, but you cannot have violence within your society, with outside who are not Islamists. So with everybody you are fighting. And there are people who are pouring ghee over that particular fire. So there are people like Communist Party, people like Congress Party, very happily making them fight between themselves. You remember in UP, there used to be continuous Shia Sunni riots every Muharram. Who stopped it? BJP stopped it. There was no other reason to stop it. Somehow BJP and some other parties also during that time, slowly they were made to understand. So the local Muslims have to understand that their future lies in India by being at peace with yourself, within your own communities, and not go to destroy yourself looking at Middle East. Once that happens, I think the attraction for ISIS or PFI or Communist Party and Congress Party's vote bank politics will slowly evaporate. But they have to understand that what is happening actually in the name of religion is destruction of their own societies. So do we want to have this kind of people who want to destroy peace, which everybody gets burnt? It is not just some Hindu or some Christian will get burnt. They themselves will get burnt in that. So this message has to go through, and people have to understand that.
Yeah, and it doesn't help, Salman Khurshid is like, we need to save Hindus and all of that and reform them and this talking down constantly. I mean, please, there's no problem. Hinduism is the Hindu way of life is extremely open to reform. And there's no issue there. I mean, please go ahead and talk about it. But your faith, which is the Muslim Islamic faith, doesn't permit outsiders, so-called outsiders, to discuss and to suggest reform. It's considered blasphemy or wrong. So please, on your own, take the initiative to do that for your own community, because honestly, if we do it, it's going to be cause offense. We don't mind you saying we need to reform Hindus, but please kind of go ahead and reform this kind of radicalization.
And he was supposed to be the progressive face of Congress, progressive face of secularism all these years. He was a leading light of so-called secular Muslims and modern Muslims. I suddenly find him jumping into this. The worst quote was, much worse quote was his in another book, where he said that 1984 riots. You remember? 1984 riots, Muslims in India are very satisfied because they thought the sin of Sikhs and Hindus has visited them. So first of all, he justifies the riots against Sikhs. Then he justifies partition in the name of Hindu Sikhs. And he absolved Jinnah and the Muslim League and all those people who wanted Pakistan partition and all the violence that followed onto the heads of Sikhs and Hindus. And also, in that same process, it defames the entire Muslim community.
Oh yes. I
have not heard any Muslim enjoying that till I read that particular part.
Yeah, and these people pass for progressive, and that's really what is so surprising and so hypocritical about all of this. But it's fine. You can politicians, they have multiple faces. They put on multiple faces. My issue is and if you can say this about Salman Khurshid, you can pinpoint other things about different politicians. But my issue, Ratan Shada ji, is that this compromises national security. It unravels the social fabric of this country. It creates distrust within communities. It creates an isolation within the Muslim mind, wherein they feel, because if you look at the average everyday life, it's pretty normal for everybody. But these so-called like progressive people are making these comments and starting off with this commentary. Sure, are they hate crimes? Yes. Are hate crimes are these targeted on religious identity? Of course. Does it happen on sexual identity? Yes. Do they happen on gender identity? Yes. Caste identity? Yes. These are all ills that exist in our society, right? And these are ills that we have to all fight against, and nobody is going to condone any of the violence on any basis of any of these things. But the sad part is, and I come back to Sanjeet, is that we will go ahead and condemn this violence and talk about it, but the other side, the so-called other side, which is so human rights champions and this and that, won't even have a word of condemnation or even consolation, if not condemnation. If condemnation does not come from your heart, at least the fact that a human life has been lost in this terrible way.
They are cautious not to condemn. They are very cautious not to condemn.
Yes.
As if the life of a Hindu activist is a low life, that he deserves to be killed. That is the kind of message that goes through. That a Hindu activist can be killed and that they don't deserve to live in the society. That's very normal to kill them, beat them up, and you will simply condone it. You will not speak a single word. You look at the kind of divisive attitude in Lakhimpur, where the jeep that killed the farmers became a huge issue, but the farmers who were lynched was never discussed.
No.
Congress party, in fact, didn't pay them any compensation. The chief minister's paid compensation only to people who suffered the death due to a jeep. Jeep running over them, but not the people who are deliberately lynched.
Yeah.
So this condoning of violence of any kind to suit your political end is going to hurt the society and it will create more violence.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Sanjit has become a victim of that particular mindset. Otherwise, he was a just young man going to Shaka doing his job, but he fell victim because the environment created in Kerala is that of violence, of hate, and that Hindus don't have a right to have their own organization or to work for their own people. That is a message. And by everybody keeping quiet, you are just adding fuel to the fire. So this danger we must look at. I think this is the danger that
Ratan Shadaji, I've said this for years and I'll say it again. Silence is complicity. And it is silence which is consistent. No murder is brutal enough. In Sanjeev's case, the wife said that she was held back by them so that she could watch her husband being killed. This is the level of brutality. Now, you think that it's happening in some faraway state, on the street, it's not going to come to you. Well, think again. We've seen what happened in Afghanistan. I've talked to a lot of women in Afghanistan in the past 3 months since August, and a lot of them were under this impression that they were safe, that the world had changed, they were getting educations, they were getting degrees. Now they are burying their degrees, they are burning their degrees, they're sitting at home and going behind the veil. So let's not be complacent about this violence is my only message.
Right. Thank you so much, Advaita, for opening your heart and sharing your feelings. I think people need to be very serious about what has happened in Kerala. Sanjit is just symbolizes that violent streak in our society, which is being abetted by so-called secular, progressive, leftist and Islamist forces. And unless we realize that we need to speak up against it, this will only increase.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.